Do you want to be a writer? Have you always wanted to write a book but have no idea where to begin? In this series, I've been sharing my own history, talking about how I've written scripts for stage and screen, and today, I'll be sharing how I became a published author. If you want to watch the other episodes first, they are linked to this video. For everyone else, let's get you writing. This is Refracted World. Writing a book is hard. If it wasn't, everyone would be an author. To write a book takes skill, knowledge, and a lot of time. It's a commitment that could take you years to finish, and even then, will it be any good? If you've seen the first 2 episodes, you'll already know what you need to do. Write. Every single day, write. It doesn't have to be a book, it could be short stories, poems, or even just getting the images from your head and onto the page. The more you write, the better you will become, and the more knowledge you will take to your next project. So, let's say you've done all of that. You're pretty adept with language and feel confident enough to start writing your debut book or novel. The first thing you need is an idea. What is it? What is the basic plot point of the story? Is it good enough to devote months or years of your life to? Why do you want to tell it? These questions are for you and you alone. It is you who'll be writing it. It is you who'll be spending your time writing it. So once you've answered all these questions, you'll want to begin writing. You will have so much energy in the beginning. You've had those first few chapters in your head ready to go for years, and now you're finally writing them on the page. It will just flow so easily. The problem most aspiring authors have is knowing what comes next. Let's say you've written 1,000 words, but depending on the genre, that could only be 1% of the total needed. And even when you do finish your book, it will likely need many edits and revisions before it's ready for publication. For the people who get this far, many give up. Sure, they'll tell themselves they'll come back to it later, but they never will. I have hundreds of these beginnings on scraps of paper, in notebooks, and hidden away in long-lost forgotten PC folders. There's a very good reason why they will likely always stay there, and that's because I didn't plan them out before I started. The entire idea was the pages I have written. Sure, I could go back to them and think up a whole story to connect them, but I never have, and I probably never will. Some of them I started in the late 90s. Now, this is a contentious issue in the writing world. Some people never plan and are still able to finish and publish their books. I'm actually one of them. Refraction wasn't planned out at all. Everything flowed from my brain and onto the page, which is why it took me many years to finish. I would have the entire story arc in my brain, but as time went on, I would forget that arc and the intricate details of the original story, which meant reimagining the entire story time and again. The only thing I knew for sure was the creation of Somnio, and the story would always need to lead to that point. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what Somnio is without ruining the book, so you'll have to read it, I'm afraid. But after 5 years with mostly 5-star reviews and even winning an award, I'm pretty sure you'll like it. The link is in the bio. Shameless plug. Throughout my life as a writer, I had never planned. When writing for factual entertainment and TV, as long as I wove into the script the pertinent parts needed, everything else was freehand. The same as a journalist and columnist. So when I started writing my first novel, I used the tried and tested technique I'd perfected over decades. But a book is a different beast entirely. A script may be a few pages, an online article only one. A book is hundreds. If you're writing a book based on history or science or technology or anything from the universe we currently live in, you can't write your book without extensive research and notes, because everything you say has to be correct. You may have a lot of knowledge in a certain area, but I don't know of any factual author who would ever publish without fact-checking their work. But you can't fact-check fiction. You can't research a world and its characters that you've invented. Sure, you may use real places and even people from history that you can read up on, but the bulk of what you're writing is brand new. For that reason, many people start writing their first novel without notes or research. All you want to do is write. Anything else seems redundant and boring. Why spend X amount of time on something you don't want to do? This is how I felt when writing Refraction, but it was a mistake, and I will never make it again. I started writing the book in 2012. For a few weeks, I was so enthusiastic. I would sit every night and just write. The story flowed from my brain and onto the page as if weaving silk. My years of knowledge and experience and my command of the English language supercharged my confidence. I was finally writing a book, the one thing I had dreamed about doing my whole life. Then my personal life was turned upside down and I stopped writing. I actually stopped creating altogether. Every year or so I would come back to Refraction, but without a plan. Therefore I had to reread everything I had written just to remember what it was about. I would sometimes write a few pages after that, but then leave it for another year and repeat the process. Without a plan, it seemed like a monumental task I just wasn't capable of achieving anymore. In 2017, I wrote Blink of an Eye, and for that musical I had to do a lot of research and planning. So when I came back to Refraction in 2019, I already knew that that's what I needed to do. And so, with lots of planning and research, I was able to start writing it again. I read back the 30,000 words I had written and made notes. I created character bios and timelines and locations and a brief outline of where the story was going and where it would end. I scrapped all of the chapters I had written after 2012 because they were terrible. I really was lost for a long time. I also updated the original manuscript. After a few weeks, I was ready to begin. And then I wrote every single day for 6 months. And in June 2019, I sent my completed first draft to my editor. She really was excellent and managed to fine-tune what I had written. She even scrapped 20,000 unnecessary words, making the final count a 100,000 word book. It was published in October 2019, and 5 years later, I rewrote the entire story and published the second edition just last week. Refraction was good. It was well received by critics and readers, but with knowledge and experience, there were parts of it I was never happy with, and now I knew how to improve it. Think of it like a director's cut. The version on sale today is the very best telling of that story. If I had planned it out before I started writing, I would likely have finished it a lot faster, but I don't believe the original story would have been any different. I needed the experience and knowledge I could only gain from after publishing. In 2021, I wrote The Cracked Reflection as a prequel story to Refraction. It is a quarter of the size at around 25,000 words, but it only took me 2 months to finish. The reason I was able to achieve this was by planning out each chapter before I started writing, and that was able to guide me through the entire process at speed. So now you know my story, it's time to start yours. Let's get you planning. Now, when I say planning, it isn't as intense or as time-consuming as you may think. Personally, I write around 3 pages, giving the synopsis of the beginning, middle and end of the story, and then I talk about the principal characters, their ages, where they're from, how they fit into the story, and what their goals are. Just let this flow. You will likely enjoy the process, as in short form, you will see your idea on the page for the very first time. Once that's done, know that it's not set in stone. Those character names may change, as may the events, and even the ending. This is your rough guide to help you write, but that doesn't mean you have to stick to what it says. If you want a little more advanced help, start an Excel spreadsheet, and in the first column, write the names of all the characters. In the next, the chapter they appear in the third, a brief summary of what happens, etc. If you don't have or know how to use Excel, don't worry. You don't need this to write, but for me, it is handy to have as a very quick reference. The more research and planning you do, the more references you will have which will all help you immensely when you write your story. When it comes to writing, take it slow, one sentence at a time. You are writing a book, and it will take you months if not years to finish. If you go slow and steady, you have a higher chance of reaching the finish line. I have lost count of the amount of conversations I had over the years when I would tell friends, family, even people in a bar that I'd just met that I was writing my first novel. I explained how good it was and how excited I was to finally be a published author, when in reality I was stuck at 30,000 words and unable to find the time or energy to continue. Depending on what you're writing and what genre it fits into, there are certain standard requirements to know in advance. A short story is up to 10,000 words, a novella is up to 40,000 words, and a book is between 60 and 120,000 words, with science fiction being in the upper limit. There are outliers, of course, but this is just your general guide. To fit with this, I was aiming for the 100,000 word mark, meaning I wasn't even a third of the way through. That abject panic stopped me from writing, as it just seemed like an impossible task. But in hindsight, if I'd only written one chapter per week, I would have been finished in 6 months. This is where pacing comes in. All the planning and research in the world can only guide. The motivation to write comes from you. Setting realistic goals will help you. Most of us have very busy lives. We are tired more than we're not, and there's always drama just around the corner which we can't plan for. Let's say you've blocked off every Sunday morning to write, but then Mrs. Bloggs next door unexpectedly gets taken into hospital and you're suddenly looking after her 2 golden retrievers. They're lovely dogs, but now you've got to squeeze in daily walks and feeding routines, and those quiet Sunday mornings to write have gone. All writers want to do is write, but finding the time and energy to do it is not easy for anyone. The only way to combat this is by making time. Let's say your daily commute into work is a 2-hour round trip. Could one of those journeys be used for writing? Instead of watching TV on an evening, could you write for half an hour before being enveloped by the sofa? We all have 24 hours in a day, and most of that is taken up with sleeping and working. But we usually do get some recreational time as well. If you can make room for just an hour a week for writing, then do it. You may not think that's enough. Just keep reminding yourself that any amount of time is better than no time. You may feel like you're not going fast enough, and that will add more pressure to your blossoming writing endeavours. But you can only do as much as you can do. Look, I know how daunting all of this is. I understand that feeling of just wishing your book would hurry up and complete itself, but only you can do that. And don't even think about turning to AI. Sure, it might be able to help with ideas or prose, but it can't write your book for you. And without human emotion, I don't believe it will ever be able to convincingly write an original story. That brings us nicely onto genre. Refraction is a modern-day science fiction techno-thriller, which is a bit of a mouthful, so let's just call it sci-fi. And whenever I tell people it's sci-fi, I will get one of 2 responses. Great, I can't wait to read it, or I don't like sci-fi. Here's the thing though, you can write in any genre you want, but if you've created engaging characters with relatable backstories, and in a setting people can understand, it doesn't matter what genre the book is set in. Now, maybe you've written a romance that's set in the future, or maybe you've written a horror that's set in a hospital, or something else, or there's a romance in there. You need to work out exactly what your main genre is, because here's the catch. Most people write about many different things, and many different genres can go into one story, but there is always one foundational genre, and that's the one you have to choose. Now on to characters. Never use the same starting letter for more than one principal character unless it's pertinent to the story. Your readers will get confused if you do this. It's a mistake far too many debut authors make, and as I've read hundreds of indie books, it can make for a confusing and frustrating reading experience. And bad reading experiences lead to bad reviews, and you want to avoid those at all cost. I'm a character-based writer. I understand the people I'm writing about, I bring them out in the book and into the real world and go to great lengths to give them qualities and ideals any reader can embrace and relate to. The people who told me they don't like sci-fi but begrudgingly read my book usually love it. If your audience can engage with your characters, they will enjoy the story you are telling so much more. Think about soap operas. They are immensely popular, but not for the setting, it's for the characters. Now, whenever you finish your first book, be that in a few months or a few years, that sense of accomplishment is one that can rarely be matched. You scaled that mountain and you reached the top. Breathe in, enjoy this moment and congratulate yourself. And when you're ready, turn around. Yeah, there's more mountain that was hidden by the clouds. You've still got a long way to go. Naff analogies aside, finishing your book is just one of many stages before it's finally published. The first major decision you need to make is, are you going to self-publish or go the traditional route? Personally, I chose to self-publish, although for my next book, I will be traversing the traditional path. Once I do that, I will make a video dedicated to the process to share with you the ins and outs. For now, good luck. I really hope this video has given you the motivation you need to start or complete your writing. I know it's hard. I know it seems like you'll never finish it, but you will. Just always remember that any time you can devote to writing is always better than no time. And once you do finish, and if you choose to self-publish, hire an editor. I cannot emphasize enough how vitally important this is for everyone. Then decide where you want to publish. Decide on your book's artwork, and make sure you write a compelling synopsis to grab the reader's attention. That synopsis, along with the cover, will sell your book. There are a wealth of information and resources online to help you through the entire process. But if you'd like me to make a concise video about how to become self-published and what comes after that, and there is a lot, then please let me know in the comments. And while you're there, if you enjoyed the video, please like it, share it, and if you haven't done already, subscribe to the channel. As I'm still at the beginning of my YouTube journey, all of this will help me grow and find an audience. Thank you.